Welcome to the Smart Fit, like and subscribe. Today's next level recipe is a pumpkin and sweet potato cake. Not too sweet, so you can definitely add some vanilla ice cream on top. Let's get ready to make this. All right, I'm Brian, this is Alazne. Welcome to our kitchen. We're gonna be making a pumpkin sweet potato cake.
Hoy vamos a hacer bizcocho de calabaza y boniato. Espero os guste. Are you stupid?
So for today's ingredients, we're gonna be using butternut squash and sweet potatoes to make our pumpkin, well, I guess that's technically a squash sweet potato cake. Now, when you make pumpkin pie in the States, you have pumpkin puree that you can go to Walmart or some other store and you can find a can of pumpkin puree. However, in Spain, we don't have that luxury. Really, pumpkin pie is an American dessert. So what I have to do is I have to make my own puree. Butternut squash that I grew in my garden last summer and I harvested not too long ago. I still have a few more. So what I've done is, because they're relatively similar, I'm using butternut squash instead of pumpkins. I'd like to know what you think about that. Leave your comments below and let me know whether you think it's disgusting or if you have some other suggestion for some other pumpkin. With that said, we're gonna get started. Where are you going? We need to do that here.
Oh.
Once you finish preheating your oven, let's go ahead and devein and de-seed the squash. Lucky for me, these were some really good pieces and I didn't have too many seeds. Next, you're gonna cut these sweet potatoes in half, making sure not to cut yourself, and then that's it. Next, line a baking sheet with aluminum foil and place the vegetables face side up. Once you're finished putting your vegetables onto the baking sheet, go ahead and drizzle a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. We're gonna throw that in the oven opposed to boiling because we wanna get rid of as much moisture as possible. Once you're done with that, go ahead and turn them over skin side up so that they can roast a little better. While your squash and sweet potatoes are roasting in the oven, we can go ahead and get everything else ready to make this cake. What we're gonna need for today is the following: flour, cinnamon, baking powder, baking soda, salt, nutmeg, freshly ground cloves, ground ginger, sugar, 2 large eggs, and olive oil. Once your timer's up, go ahead, open the oven. You can see all that moisture escaping. That's what we want. So from here, I would highly recommend you let it cool a little bit or else you're gonna burn your fingers like I did and I wasn't so smart. I was a little impatient. Every oven is a little different, so if your squash comes out a little hard, go ahead, throw it back inside the oven and roast it for another 10 minutes up to 20 minutes until it's soft and the skin peels off relatively easy. It should be fork tender. And that's as hard as it gets. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna place the vegetables over a fine mesh strainer, or you can do a cheesecloth, and what we're trying to do is trying to get more moisture out. Then from there, we're gonna place that into a food processor or a blender, or in this case, a magic bullet, and we're gonna go ahead and puree everything. So this is a multiple step process to make sure that we don't get any pieces of like hard vegetables in there. Once your puree is smooth, make sure it's smooth, go ahead and transfer it to another bowl and then repeat. Just like that, you've got 2 15-ounce cans of your liquid gold pumpkin puree with nothing else added. All we have to do is wait for it to chill out and make sure you cover it so no pests ruin your hard work. 24 hours later and we're ready to, I'm just kidding, not 24 hours later, just whenever it's cool, go ahead, take a slotted spoon and scoop it into a bowl and measure out roughly about 15 ounces. You should get 2 servings in here and then put the remaining aside. Next thing we're gonna do is mix up all of our dry ingredients except for sugar. If you want to know exactly how much of each ingredient we have, the recipe is listed in the description below, so check that out. Once you've got everything into a mixing bowl, go ahead, take the baby whisk and give it a little stir. Now we move in the big boy, the tank, the KitchenAid. You don't need one of these. I've made this recipe plenty of times with just a regular whisk and a little bit of elbow grease. I just want to show off some of our toys. However, in this case, what we're actually going to be doing is going to be a little bit more advanced in that we're going to beat the eggs and the sugar together until the color changes, right? So at the beginning, it should look a little yellow, darker, and as you increase the speed and everything becomes incorporated, you'll notice that the color of the mixture will begin to lighten, right? And so there it goes, looks really, really light, and don't worry if you can't see it all that well. I'm gonna lift this up so you can take a glance. But see, it almost looks like batter as is. Now from here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna slowly, now whether you're doing this with a KitchenAid or you're doing this by hand, this next step is crucial. Slowly stream in the oil while constantly mixing until everything is well mixed. Okay, so here it looks like it's a little separated, so you need to go until there's no more oil and egg sugar mixture separation. Now we're substituting the whisk for the beater, and in this case you always want to make sure that it's disconnected before you stick your finger in this thing, because that would probably have ripped off my hand. Next, we're gonna pour in half of our dry mixture, so that's the flour and all the warm spices that give us those autumn and winter notes in our desserts, like a pumpkin pie or a carrot cake. Now, we're only gonna add half, and then we're gonna, as quickly as possible, add in half of our puree mixture, okay? And what that's gonna do, it's gonna allow it to mix without forming too much gluten, and the gluten would make the cake, it would make it more like a bread, and we don't want that too much chew. We want something tender and soft. So then you're gonna follow that up with adding the remaining part of the dry mixture, and then we're gonna just repeat and add the remaining part of the puree. See, and this is one of the great things about just having a mixer is like I don't have to literally stand there. It could just be working. I can walk away and come back and do some other things. Don't walk away for too long, but you know, it's a luxury. Now this part is really important too. So you can see that it's a little bit dry on the edges, and that's okay, because I just want to mix it until the dry ingredients is barely mixed in there. There might even be some left over, and then I'm gonna take my spatula and incorporate everything by hand. My wife's a little voice shy, so I'm gonna do the voiceover. My arms are not so pretty like hers. This next step, we're gonna be taking a little bit of parchment paper and tracing some circles of the base of the disc. And then we're gonna cut those out using a pair of scissors. It feels like we're back in second grade. Anyways, we're gonna use a little bit of butter and rub that gently, just a little bit on the bottom, just to help the parchment paper stick to that. And then that's going to really help the cake release once it's done baking. Next, we're gonna add a little bit of flour to the edges, right? And just roll that around, give it a little pat, 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 pat. Again, the whole purpose of this is to help the cake release. Because we're a little extra, we're gonna take each cake and we're gonna weigh it out so that they're exactly the same. I know what you're thinking, oh my God, how do I convert grams to ounces and ounces into grams conversions? It's 21 ounces per cake for all y'all Americans. Now next, pistachios. Next step, go ahead and finely or roughly chop them. I recommend that you finely chop them because the heavier they are, the more likely they are to sink to the bottom before the cake cooks. Sprinkle on top, get a little fancy, have some fun, a little bit of pistachio bait, maybe, nah. Next, we're gonna sprinkle just a little bit of sugar on top just to give it a little sparkle once it's finished baking. You know, you gotta do it for the gram. Slide those cakes into a preheated oven, and she, my friends, is bringing sexy back. Oh yeah. Before taking the cakes out, you gotta do the mama's test. You know your mother taught you the toothpick test. Insert the toothpick in the center, make sure it comes out clean, and your cakes are done. All right, we had a little bit of cracking. That's a little bit of technical issues, but we're not gonna get into that. That one looks pretty.